In this video, we'll take up the homework on inverses of a function. For question 1, they're asking you if f and g are inverses of each other. There are a lot of ways to do this question, but I think that one of the easiest ways is just find the inverse of f, and you realize that inverse of f is not equal to g of x, so they're not inverses of each other. An alternative way to do the question is to find f of g of x. Okay, I didn't mention this in the lesson, but if f and g are inverses of another, an algebraic property is true. F of g of x is equal to x. And if f of g of x is not equal to x, then they are not inverses of one another. For question 2, if you're told f of 3 equals negative 5, remember x becomes y and y becomes x, so inverse f of negative 5 must be equal to 3. For question 3, and once you know that, then you can easily solve for x. For question 3, you just build the function given the information. It's a linear function, very simple. Find the inverse. So instead of c of x is now x of c, which represents a function that gives the number of kilometers driven as a function of cost of a one-day rental in dollars. Question 4, write the function. Once again, very straightforward. It's linear. And then find the inverse, which is also very straightforward. So s of x, x of s. And then the inverse represents a function that gives the original price as a function of the sale price. Determine the inverse of f of x. Okay, so this one, just follow the math, the 4 steps. Now be careful. You should write down a restriction on the domain of the inverse, because it actually doesn't make sense that the inverse of the square root function is a parabola. You should have half the parabola. Okay, you can think about it in terms of the graph, but that's why I wrote down a restriction. Now, how did I get this restriction that x must be less than or equal to negative 5? Remember, the range of my function is going to be the domain of my inverse. So I know that the range of my function f. It must be the output values must be less than or equal to negative 5. So that's the same restriction I'm going to put on the domain of my inverse. Oops, you can't see. So there you go. That's the solutions for the inverse of a function.